It was a cold, foggy evening when Detective James Harrington arrived at Thornfield Hall. The grand old mansion stood isolated on the edge of the moors, its towering spires and dark windows giving it an eerie, foreboding appearance. Harrington had been summoned by Lady Eleanor Thornfield, the mistress of the house, following the mysterious death of her husband, Sir Charles Thornfield. Sir Charles had been found dead in his study the previous night, a single gunshot wound to his chest. The local police had ruled it a suicide, but Lady Eleanor was convinced it was murder. She had known her husband well, and suicide was not in his nature. Desperate for answers, she had called upon Detective Harrington, known for his sharp mind and ability to solve the most perplexing cases. As Harrington stepped into the grand foyer of Thornfield Hall, he was greeted by Lady Eleanor, a tall, elegant woman with a pale face and worried eyes. "Thank you for coming, Detective," she said, her voice trembling. "I know my husband was murdered, and I need your help to prove it." Harrington nodded. "I'll do everything I can, Lady Thornfield, but I'll need to ask questions and examine the scene of the crime." Lady Eleanor led him to Sir Charles's study, a spacious room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a large oak desk. The body had been removed, but a dark stain on the carpet marked where Sir Charles had fallen. Harrington examined the room carefully, noting the position of the desk, the windows, and the door. "Who found the body?" he asked. "The butler, Mr. Grayson," Lady Eleanor replied. "He brought Charles his evening tea and found him. Like that." Harrington nodded and asked to speak to the butler. Mr. Grayson, a stern-looking man in his 50s, entered the study and stood stiffly by the door. "Tell me what happened last night," Harrington said. "I brought Sir Charles his tea at 9 o'clock, as usual," Grayson said. "He was sitting at his desk, going over some papers. He seemed perfectly fine. When I returned an hour later to collect the tray, I found him." "Did you hear anything unusual during that hour?" Harrington asked. Grayson hesitated. "I thought I heard raised voices coming from the study, but I couldn't be sure. The walls in this house are thick." Harrington's eyes narrowed. "Raised voices? Who else was in the house last night?" "Lady Eleanor, of course," Grayson said. "And Miss Victoria Thornfield, Sir Charles's niece. She arrived yesterday afternoon for a visit. Mr. Edward Blackwood, Sir Charles's business partner, was also here. He dined with the family before retiring to his room." Harrington made a mental note of the names. "Thank you, Grayson. That will be all for now." Next, Harrington interviewed Miss Victoria Thornfield, a young woman in her early 20s with fiery red hair and a defiant expression. "Did you have any disagreements with your uncle last night?" Harrington asked. Victoria's eyes flashed. "Uncle Charles and I always disagreed. He thought I was too headstrong, too modern. But I didn't kill him, if that's what you're implying." Harrington raised an eyebrow. "I'm just gathering facts, Miss Thornfield. Where were you between 9 and 10 o'clock last night?" "I was in my room, reading," she said. "You can ask the maid. She brought me hot chocolate at 9:30. Harrington thanked her and moved on to Mr. Edward Blackwood, a tall, distinguished man with a calm demeanor. "Sir Charles and I had a productive meeting after dinner," Blackwood said. "We discussed business matters, and then I retired to my room. I heard nothing unusual." Harrington studied him carefully. "Did you and Sir Charles have any disagreements?" Blackwood's expression darkened. "We had our differences, but nothing that would lead to violence. Charles was a good friend and a trusted partner." As Harrington continued his investigation, he discovered that Sir Charles had been under financial strain. His business was struggling, and he had recently taken out a large loan. Harrington also found a crumpled letter in the wastebasket, addressed to Sir Charles from an unknown sender, demanding payment of a debt. Pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but Harrington needed more evidence. He returned to the study and examined the desk. In a hidden compartment, he found a small revolver and a will, signed by Sir Charles, leaving everything to Lady Eleanor. Harrington's eyes narrowed. If Sir Charles had been planning to kill himself, why would he hide the gun? And why would he leave a will that benefited his wife, whom he had reportedly been estranged from? Suddenly, Harrington noticed something on the windowsill, a faint smudge of mud. He opened the window and looked out. Below, the ground was soft from recent rain, and there were footprints leading away from the house. Harrington followed the footprints to a small shed at the edge of the property. Inside, he found a pair of muddy boots and a coat with a torn sleeve. The coat pocket contained a letter identical to the one he had found in the study. Harrington returned to the house and confronted Mr. Grayson. "You were the one who killed Sir Charles, weren't you?" Grayson's face turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about." Harrington held up the coat. "This belongs to you. You went to the shed to hide the evidence, but you left footprints and mud on the windowsill. You were blackmailing Sir Charles, and when he refused to pay, you killed him." Grayson's shoulders slumped. "He was going to ruin me," he whispered. "I had no choice." With Grayson's confession, the mystery of Thornfield Hall was solved. As Harrington left the mansion, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Another case closed, thanks to his keen eye and relentless pursuit of the truth. But as he drove away, he couldn't shake the feeling that Thornfield Hall still held secrets that might never be uncovered.